Na een reeks succesvolle internationale edities, nu voor het eerst in Nederland. DevOps Conference. Van 20 april tot 24 april in Van der Valk Amstel, Amsterdam. De conferentie voor CI/CD, Kubernetes, Platform Engineering en DevSecOps. Ook onze enige echte Jan Stomphorst zal een talk houden over natuurlijk Kubernetes. Ga naar devopscon.io. Gebruik K8_podcast voor 15% korting. En dan zien we jullie daar. Welkom bij weer een nieuwe aflevering van de Nederlandse Kubernetes podcast. De podcast over Kubernetes voor iedereen. Ik ben Ronald Kers en met mij is zoals altijd de enige echte
Jan Stomphorst.
Solutions Architect bij
HCSC ICT.
HCC ICT.
Nog steeds.
Niet HCS.
Oh ja.
We zitten wel bij HCS Hoop.
Ja, en het regent buiten en ik was doorweekt vanochtend.
Ja,
Dus-
maar precies. Als je mazzel hebt, mag je ook nog in de regen terug zo.
Nee.
Hij is op de motor. Oh, lekker. Voor context.
I'm on the motorbike.
Hij is on the motorbike,
Switch
yeah.
English, bit.
Yeah, we're going to switch to English, yeah?
But I'm on the motorbike, so I had some rain this morning.
Yeah.
A bit.
So if you're wondering who we're talking to, we have two guests. That's Zahra Dehghanpour.
Yeah.
No, not forget, okay. And Feike Wierda.
Yeah.
Welcome, both of you, in our podcast. And I will start with Zahra. Can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, sure. Hi, I'm Zahra Dehghanpour. I'm a platform engineer at Bol.com. And I have 7 years of experience in this industry. I was a developer at first, then I found the infrastructure more interesting because of the challenges and everything. Then I changed my field. I became a DevOps engineer at that time, and it's constantly changing. So now I think it's been transferred from the DevOps engineer to platform engineer. So now I'm platform engineer, and enjoying my life at Bol.
Okay.
Is developing not that interesting?
No,
No.
not for me.
Well, that's quite a statement to make.
Okay, cool.
Not for me. Yeah.
But developing is not that.
It's quite routine for me because you have some common challenges and they are quite the same day to day. They don't change, at least for me. But for infrastructure, when you work at infrastructure, every day is a surprise, basically.
What's your biggest surprise then?
Here it's a bit less, but when I was because I'm originally from Iran, when I worked in Iran, because of all the sanction and everything, we had to host all the infrastructure, so we had everything on perm, and those days were just so interesting because we had lots of challenges. For example, a server just decided to not working from now on, and then we had to change it, and then we had to, for example, try to design everything in high available so it can be fault tolerant and everything. So there was lots of challenges there. So I really like to make myself miserable in that sense.
Did you always wanted to start in IT when you were young, or?
It was kind of by chance because I like it, but I think it was also I was lucky that I found this earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Feike, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Feike Wierda. I work for HCS. I'm a consultant, and right now my current assignment is at Bol, and I've been there for roughly a year now. And most of what I'm doing there revolves around software supply chain security, which is also what brought us here to our little talk today. And I have like 25-ish years behind me in IT in various positions, of which the last 15 years on the platform side. Yeah.
Okay, and you when you were a little kid, you were always interested in technology, or?
I was always messing around with computers. Yeah. Yeah, this was the early days where we had 86s and that sort of stuff. And then at some point in the mid 90s, Linux started to come around, and I got really interested in that. And well, I essentially never looked back after that. So
Yeah, always helping the people in the street fixing their computers and stuff.
yeah. Well, I tried to stay away from that as much as possible, but
We've all been there.
you know what it's like. You've been there.
The greatest thing of Linux, nobody runs it at home.
You can always say, hey, this is Windows. I know fuck all about this. I have no clue what I'm doing.
Still, I say Windows. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. But what they do know something about is security. So you have a talk here at Hope, at the HCS Open Platform Experience, securing the software supply chain at bol.com. Can you explain to our listeners what the talk is about?
Yeah,
sure.
Let me run the introduction. So I work at Bol as part of a program to address issues with the software supply chain security. This has been something that we've been seeing in the industry evolving over the past 10-ish years, where attackers shift their attention away from direct attacks, and they try to attack your supply chain instead, where they will maybe mess with dependencies that you include or other parts of the software. We all have seen these like big high-profile attacks. Apple's been a victim, Microsoft's been a victim. There was the SolarWinds thing a couple of years ago. And so what we're doing, we're not necessarily security people or anything. We work on the CI/CD team, and so we're involved in that whole process of getting the fruits of the labor of the developers out into the real world, providing them with the tools they need. And of course, right there, you're sitting at that very point where all those things from the supply chain come together.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you implement that? You say all the things of the supply chain comes together. How do you do that? That's shown on Discovery. How do you do that?
How do we do that? Yeah.
How do you do it? Well, so there's so much to it. So we started off our talk just now by exploring what really is the supply chain, and the software supply chain really is everything that touches your software, right? So it's third-party dependencies, but it's also your own people, it's your own code, it's your own what would you say? The tools you work with, your IDEs. It's even the platform you run on. If you stretch the definition a little bit, so it really runs the gamut, right? And there's a few portions of that entire spectrum where we have focused on, and so first of all, we started with the third-party dependencies, and then we also shifted more towards the internal threat actors, and that sounds really dramatic, internal threat actors, but essentially any developer can be an internal threat actor.
So it's like a marketing brand.
Yeah, exactly. But they can. It sounds like it's someone doing something very nefarious, but it could also be someone just doing something mildly stupid on a Monday morning. And so these are the things you try to catch.
Ask the Cloudflare engineers from yesterday.
I saw a post about that.
I saw a lot of posts of people. My first day at Cloudflare.
Yeah, my third day. Well, that must have been fun.
Yeah. So if we zoom in on the third party, of course that's the biggest thing. I think developers are great and they never make mistakes. But
this is true.
Now, if you focus on a third party, how do you solve that?
Well,
Zahra, any idea?
Yes, we just had an incident about this specific thing that one of our security members in the security team tried to somehow do something to prove that this can happen. He tried to publish one of the internal packages that we have with a higher version to a public registry. And because we are using Artifactory, it ended up downloading that malicious higher version package from public registry instead of downloading that from our private registry. And that way we found out, okay, it's a real thing. We need to do something about that. And the journey starts that, okay, we sit down together. What can we do in order to, for example, fix this problem? We try to set some policies. For example, we try to lock down everything to some pre-approved private registry. All the teams should be able to upload to those private registries. And for example, we disallow these internally built packages from being downloaded from the public registries with Artifactory to make sure that nothing malicious can happen there. And by implementing these things, we kind of mitigate, not fully fix, because there's nothing such as fixing. We are trying to mitigate problems. We try to mitigate this dependency confusion this way. And we are still trying to, if there's something that needs to be taken care of, we are still trying to find that and try to find a solution for it. But so far, we were able to mitigate this problem by doing that.
Okay, so a developer starts his new part of Bol's software. It's completely new. He needs new libraries. And then he uploads the libraries to the internal repo. And your software uses that repo. But what if those libraries he selected, because they're new and there's already a malicious code in there? How do you scan that software for malicious code, or how what kind of process is that?
So are we talking about like an actual new library, like a newly developed library,
or a unique version of a new library? Because I think lots of developers use external libraries.
Yeah, for sure.
And probably they want to use the newest library there is always, and that's not in your repository, I think.
No, it's not. Well, that is to say, we have, on the one end, we have our own local repositories, and then we also act as a proxy to the upstreams. So you can pretty much retrieve anything you want from the upstreams. So there's no, it's not like we have a whitelist of packages that are allowed. And so what that means is you can pull in anything that you want, but then at some point during your pipeline execution, you're going to run into our security scanners that are going to scan these packages to see what it is, and if there's any vulnerabilities associated with those packages.
So a developer does not download something directly from the internet. It always goes through the...
That is exactly right. So our build environment is pretty much air-gapped. So it does not have an open connection to the world. And so if you want to retrieve packages, you're going to have to do so through our Artifactory setup. Yeah.
Cool. So now I've got working libraries. Developers are great.
You still are.
And then? So
you're alluding to something?
No. And then?
No, there's more. There's more to the process.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take the stage away from Zahra, because I'm just a mere consultant here. I don't want to take away your shine. So please.
And then?
And one of the other challenges that we wanted to solve was to enable 4S principle on everything that goes to production. And that was challenging because every team had their own way of working. For example, some of them have had peer review in place, some of them didn't have. And we tried to offer a standard way of just doing that. We tried to come up with a manager structure. Because we are using GitLab in GitLab, that we just have a group for each team and then grant permission to the right team for each group, and also enable some policies to make sure that all the protected branches are peer reviewed. if a developer creates a merge request to, for example, to merge to main, it has to be reviewed at least by one person. And this way we can ensure that, okay, nothing will go to the production without peer reviewed. And that's not, the story doesn't end here, because we also want to make sure that, for example, maybe a developer wants to develop something on his or her local and tries to build the image and push it to the registry and tries to run it in Kubernetes. We try to also enable binary authorization, try to sign the images during the pipeline to make sure that only signed image can be run on Kubernetes. And we also do some sanity check before signing. There are some criteria. For example, we check that if this pipeline is running in the manager structure, if this pipeline is running on a protected branch. And this way, after all these checks, then we sign the images inside the pipeline, and we also enable the binary authorization features in Kubernetes on GKE to make sure that only signed images can run there.
Kost het beheer van Kubernetes je veel tijd en expertise? Maak kennis met ACC ICT. Zij ontzorgen je volledig met managed Kubernetes diensten op elke cloud. Gecertificeerde specialisten zorgen voor compleet beheer, 24/7 support en optimale beveiliging. Jij kunt je focussen op je core business, terwijl je Kubernetes-omgeving in betrouwbare handen is. Manage Kubernetes van ACC ICT. Jouw zorg, onze expertise. Bezoek accict.com.
And what if I want to use Redis in my application? So I've got an application, I need a Redis. That's not in your repo, or not?
There are some whitelisted images in the binary authorization that we have, but we also have teams have the availability to mirror some images in their own artifact registry in Google, and therefore they can sign it, for example, after pulling it, and then run it on Kubernetes.
Okay, are they signing it? So if they use Redis or any other software, they have to sign first the containers?
Yes.
And how does that work? Is that also a peer review, or does the developer that by himself?
No, it's peer reviewed. They cannot sign outside the pipeline. They can only sign inside the pipeline after it's been peer reviewed.
Okay, awesome. And now we've got something working in Kubernetes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. Yeah. So do you also look like at a third-party support of application, like in Sneak or Kyverno kind of solutions that are implemented during the pipeline? If you look at the shift left approach, we had like ChainGuard earlier today. They sign the images by themselves, as they have their own repository. Is that are those technologies you also use?
Not right now, no. So what we do is we on our end. So there's various places in the process where scanning is done, but mostly that is done not by us, but by security teams. And what we do is we use GitLab's security scanners during the build process, essentially. So we just, I think somewhere underneath there's Trivy for that, and there's some, and for SUS there's also, I think it's their own proprietary offering. But we use GitLab's offerings to at least get the scanning done on the pipeline, and then once it gets pushed onto the repositories, then the security department, security people are going to do additional scanning from there.
Yeah, because you hear a lot about shift left and taking scanning as soon as possible in the whole pipeline.
Yeah, so that's what we try, and this is something that we implemented fairly recently, like weeks ago, that we finally because it is a chore to get that deployed in a workable fashion for all these different teams, because you're looking at upwards of 100 teams. Again, they all do their own thing. They all have free reign within GitLab. And so you have to make sure that whatever you're adding, what you're tacking onto their pipeline doesn't conflict with any other things that they're doing. But ultimately, using the same software we developed to configure the managed structure within GitLab, we also deployed all these pipeline execution policies that enforce the scanning to take place during the pipeline runs.
Okay. Cool. And so the pipeline has run, your application is in Kubernetes. Are you still running then also security tests in Kubernetes itself?
No, not that we are aware of. At least we are doing this inside the pipeline for now. And the way that we have it right now is because we just recently launched them, and we don't plug pipeline because of some security findings. Because first we want to just provide some insight for developers that, okay, this is the vulnerability that you need to fix. And after this checking with them that if the scanners that we have the high quality, then we can also try to block the pipeline. For example, if your code has 2 critical vulnerabilities, it cannot be deployed to production at all. But that's kind of a strict policy that not everyone likes it for sure. But
Yeah, of course.
yeah, but if you have these mature scanners, I think it's also the next step.
Cool.
But so the images are scanned
Mhm.
when they're in the registry.
Sure.
So if your if your team has an image running on production and there's some CVE that pops up in your image, you're definitely going to get notified by the security people. Like you got some work to do here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the 0 day is today and not yesterday.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So that is a continuous process, but that is outside of the realm of what we're doing.
Okay, cool. And is your work now done? Is your job over?
It's running in Kubernetes.
We were just discussing this. Like I said, I might as well quit now. Go on to the next assignment. No, but that's of course security. You're shooting at a moving target. It's continuously evolving, and I think there's still, first of all, there's so much improvement still to be had in the process that we have right now. I think that having people review other people's work is still a flawed way of working, right? If I can make a mistake, then the guy reviewing my work can also make a mistake. And I really see that there is
Well, of course, there are automated test pipelines
for sure. But I think there's a big opportunity here to harness the power of AI to alleviate the job of the reviewing.
Yeah, so because how good is the peer review? Because some peers are not that are really good, but not that good.
No, that's exactly the problem I'm trying to illustrate, right? You don't really know. Like again, Monday morning.
Yeah,
I'm not fully awake. Yeah, well, this is fine. Thank you, green check
I
mark.
forgot my coffee, and
or I'll paint you another one. I have no time for this.
Yeah,
Let's just hit approve and move on.
Yeah, it's okay.
That will
He did it 10 times before. It was okay. The 11th time will be okay. Or this
exactly.
time already, right?
Or I will approve your MR. You should approve my MR. Just like
Exactly. Yeah. Because at some point it does become a real nuisance, right?
Yeah.
You feel that you've got better things to do. There's tickets on the backlog that need doing, and now I'm reviewing some other people's.
and reviewing is a pain.
Yeah, it is a pain, and so I really think that that is something that is very much worth exploring moving forward. And then there's one other thing that worries me, and that is the developer tooling. I think that we have a major blind spot in general where it comes to IDEs, where they're all plugin based, and where there's so much which has such a big supply chain of its own. I think that's really is also going to be one of the next like battlegrounds security wise. We're already seeing it now, right? Where there's weird malicious plugins reaching via VS Code and all that.
Oh yeah, that's fun. And that's also a lot of plugins are self-built by some people and not maintained properly.
Not maintained properly, and they also depend on other stuff down the line. I think that is moving forward is going to be one of the new attack surfaces. That
So a new pipeline for the plugins.
well, I mean, well, security-wise, your work is never really done, of course, and we're just doing that small bit on the security side. Like there's so much more to it.
What kind of advice can you give some people if they want to start securing the pipelines?
What's the first thing they should do?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I'm thinking.
Yeah, take your time. Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing that you want to do is know what is going into it. I think that is the first thing. Like have an idea of what your developers are putting in there. So what dependencies do you have? And of course, there's so many tools for all the different platforms that can give you that sort of information. I think that will be step zero essentially, because most people don't know, because it's so easy to add a dependency. And if I add a dependency, then it has dependencies, and it has dependencies, and you're adding these whole trees of external packages that are all maintained outside of your nice little gated setup that you have. So I think that will be step zero to know what's going on. And then from there, you can go to like your air-gapped setup where you're never pulling anything into the outside from the outside world.
Well, that's a good thing.
And not let anybody in. Right, so
Close the door.
close the doors.
So when zo'n air-gap pipeline, I think a lot of developers are not using that. I think
No, because it can be a hassle.
Yeah.
It is because you have to, before you can have your pipelines air-gapped, you need to have a lot of infrastructure around it to still be able to work with it. Because these packages and all the other things do not come from the sky, right? It has to come from the internet somehow.
Hey, take away some freedom. Also,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that's if you want, that's
Yeah,
another thing that maybe some developers.
If you start
Have a-
touching their freedoms, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also one more thing, based on the experience that we had, we also cannot be control freak, because at some point we need to trust people that we are working with. We cannot fix all the problems all at once. It's
No,
just-
the developers are great.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, because if we cannot trust them, then they can find their own way to
No, of course not.
just doing their malicious stuff. We need to also keep that in mind, that we just do baby steps to secure everything, but we cannot control everything that's going on.
And how was the sentiment of the developers? Now, were they happy that these changes are made, or because with these you're taking away a bit of freedom?
Yeah, what I think is what you see. Just look at your banking app and stuff. You know, you want everything just as secure as possible, but you also want to just log in with a 4-digit code and have access to everything. You know, so whereas there needs to be a balance somewhere. So you need to be secure, but also have the accessibility for everybody using it.
Yeah.
So
I think the developers need their freedom, right? They have to be able to work freely. But I think that the restrictions that we put on them aren't that big of a deal, because they can still access all the packages that are in the public repositories for Python or Maven or NPM or what have you. But it's just that there's a little proxy in there somewhere that we're controlling. But
yeah,
we don't impose any restrictions on the packages they can use. And as far as, if I recall, when we started to get them to migrate to our controlled GitLab structure, there was not that much pushback, because I think that is also because we did all the work. No, and
They just needed to press the button.
well, that is true. They only had to move their own projects into the structure, and that was it. And there was like, I think it was an hour or something per repository that they had to invest for. And there was some pushback, of course. There was some,
Of course.
why do I need this? And it was working fine.
I don't want to jump through all the hoops and stuff. And, yeah. That's how it works, right?
And what I found interesting is that once we released the security scanners, then there was some muttering. Why do I need this? And my pipeline now tells me that I'm a threat to national security. And why are you? And that costs them nothing. It doesn't block their pipeline. It doesn't break. It adds a couple of seconds to the execution. And for some reason or another, just seeing it pop up in their merge request summary somehow triggered them to start muttering. I don't know.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So we always have a final questions. That is, how do you foresee the future of Kubernetes? And so if I would put a crystal ball here on the table, what would you like to see in the future surrounding Kubernetes? And Zahra, what would you like to see?
Iona Kubernetes is perfect to me. I don't know.
Perfect.
How
You're the first one in 3 years that says that.
We're done.
Mic drop. Well, Feike, thank you very much.
Well, we're done here. It's a wrap.
No, but more. You can also think a little bit more outside of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
More like, or maybe in the structure of what you're doing in your daily work. What you see. What would you like to see in the future happening in the area?
Maybe you can go first so I can think.
Well, there's one. And this is not necessarily. It's not even necessarily Kubernetes related, but it is a pet peeve of mine, and that is that the results from security scanners are often, now I wouldn't say bullshit, but they're often horrible. So you often, as a developer, and we as platform engineers as well, we come in the morning and there's a whole list of CVEs that we have to resolve, and then you go through them one by one and you find, okay, this is not exploitable, this is not exploitable, this is not exploitable, this never gets called. Still I have to address all of them because they produce a little red thingy somewhere in a system somewhere. That's something that always gets me. I really wish that there would be better software to better detect if I'm actually vulnerable to a certain CVE, rather than just saying, this is present in your image, so go fix it.
All right.
Yeah, cool.
You can relate to that, Jan? You can relate to that?
Yeah, no, but I think there's already a good software that you can exclude. Can't you exclude CVs?
For sure. Man,
That's dangerous.
yeah. But we're seeing things moving in that direction, and also where there's more of it, like a deep scanning, like, is this bit of software actually going called? But it's not pervasive. Like most of the tools that are out there, just, okay, I have, I'm going to compare my list of dependencies to my list of vulnerable versions, and then that's going to produce, done, exactly. So not a Kubernetes one, but definitely something.
No,
it
doesn't have to be. Like, that's why that's why I can expand the crystal ball a little bit. Zahra, anything to add, or is it still perfect, everything?
No. I thought you were asking specifically about Kubernetes, so that's why.
Oh, no, not really. Well.
Yeah. I think some of the things that I have in my mind is already happening. For example, we just attended a talk this morning about the how we can use some AI agent in GitLab to, for example, help us in the code review or help us in mitigating some vulnerability that is found by the scanners. So I think that one is also really helping the developers spending time more efficiently and making them more productive in terms of fixing their problem or reviewing the code or stuff like this.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you both very much for joining us so spontaneously in the podcast. And Let's keep in touch and we'll gladly keep updated on your progress.
And Kubernetes is great. And perfect and done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deze podcast is een initiatief van HCS ICT en wij zijn te beluisteren op onze website k8spodcast.nl via Spotify, Apple en alle andere favoriete podcastproviders.